Hello, everyone. In this short video, I would like to share with you some information about authentic leadership. The information and this presentation comes from Peter Northouse's book, Leadership Theory and Practice. Here I have an overview. We're going to describe authentic leadership. We're going to look at three perspectives. We're going to look at two approaches to authentic leadership, the practical and theoretical. Then we're going to look at the impact of authentic leadership. And then we're going to look at some lessons for application. From a descriptive perspective, this is one of my favorite approaches to leadership. I have some biases towards different approaches to leadership. So this is one of my favorite ones because it matches well with how I see or how I practice leadership. It is still in development stages, and the origin of the interest to this approach by scholars and even some practitioners came at the beginning of 2000s when our society has gone through different scandals at the government level and different levels of organizations. And people were disappointed in their leaders, and they wanted to have leaders who they could trust and who they were open and transparent with them. Since this approach to leadership, it's in its development, don't have a single definition that most people agree upon, but there is some consensus or convergence of how people see authentic leadership. This approach to leadership focuses on whether leadership is genuine, honest, and transparent, and focuses on the authenticity of the leader in the process. So we have a component that it's leader-centric, and then we have also focus on the process between leaders and followers. From a leader's perspective, scholars have identified that authentic leaders tend to exhibit genuine leadership. They're open and transparent and honest in their relationship with followers. They tend to lead for conviction, and they are originals, not copies, where they're not fake. So here are the three perspectives of authentic leadership. The intrapersonal perspective focuses on self-concept and how self-concept relates to the actions of leaders, and it relies on the story of the leader. From an interpersonal perspective, leadership is co-created by leaders and followers together. So going back to the definition of leadership that Northouse shared in chapter 1. So leadership, it's a reciprocal process where leaders are impacting followers, and then followers are impacting leaders. And the third one is developmental approach or perspective of authentic leadership. And from this perspective, we are stating that leadership or authentic leadership can be developed and can be nurtured through different developmental activities. And in this presentation, we're going to focus on two approaches of authentic leadership from a developmental perspective. So the first approach to authentic leadership is the prescriptive one, or the practical approach. And this one is based on the work of Bill George. Bill George used to be a business executive. After he retired, he became curious about different aspects of leadership. He, in fact, went through different challenges in his personal life and his personal leadership. And after retirement, he embarked on a journey to learn more about leadership, and he interviewed 125 business executives and came up with this approach to leadership. You see right here, three circles in the middle of this image. The first circle there is the authentic leader. Second circle contains 5 characteristics of authentic leaders, and then on the outer circle, you have 5 corresponding characteristics to each of those characteristics, and you have 2 double-headed arrows there. So we identified that authentic leaders tend to have a clear purpose. And when they have a clear purpose, they tend to lead with passion. In addition to that, authentic leaders tend to have strongly held values, and those values guide daily behaviors of authentic leaders. Authentic leaders tend to develop strong relationships with their followers, and that leads to connectedness. So they are open, they're transparent, they share their own struggles, and then as a result of that, followers are more willing to share their own struggles, and then that leads to higher degree of connectedness. Authentic leaders tend to exhibit high self-discipline, and because of that, that leads to consistency. So that's what followers want. They want not to guess how a leader is going to behave from day to day. They want consistency. They want to know what to expect tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So self-discipline is important. And the last one is that authentic leaders know their mission, and then they lead from their heart. They exhibit empathy, they put themselves in the shoes of others, and therefore that leads to compassion. So that's the prescriptive approach. The theoretical approach to leadership is the second one. It's more descriptive. This one is still in developmental stages and is based on the work of Lutens and Avolio and Walumbwa and colleagues. And Walumbwa and colleagues identified this definition of authentic leadership from a theoretical perspective, that authentic leadership is a pattern that draws upon and promotes positive psychological capacities and a positive ethical climate to foster greater self-awareness and internalize moral perspective, balanced processing of information, and relational transparency on the part of leaders working with followers and fostering positive self-development. As you can see in this definition, we see elements from positive psychology or positive organizational behavior, and those aspects impact the behavior of authentic leaders. Here is the model that Walumbwa and colleagues proposed based on their examination of other research on authentic leadership, and identified that authentic leadership has 4 components. Self-awareness, in other words, authentic leaders tend to exhibit a high degree of self-awareness. They are aware of who they are in terms of their values, their identity, their emotions, their motives, their personalities. And they also have a high degree of internalized moral perspective. This is a self-regulatory process where authentic leaders use high moral standards that guide their behaviors. And then also they engage in balanced processing. It's another self-regulatory process that leaders, when they make decisions, that tend to involve opinions or perspective of others. They don't show favoritism in this process. And then they also engage in relational transparency. They're open and transparent with their followers, and that leads to a high degree of trust. Also, there are 3 groups of factors that influence authentic leadership. The first one is positive psychological capacities of confidence, or that self-efficacy, of hope, optimism, and resilience. Also, moral reasoning capacities of individuals tend to impact their leadership, or their authentic leadership, I should say. In other words, they have a high degree of understanding of right and wrong, and then promote justice, greater good for the community and organizations. And also, critical life events tend to impact one's authentic leadership, both from positive and negative, and they can be from personal or organizational life. So what's the impact? So more recent research has focused on identifying some of the outcomes, the impact that authentic leaders have on individuals or even different units, team, or organizations. So some research has identified correlations between authentic leadership and various outcomes. For example, they identified that authentic leadership correlates with employee motivation, satisfaction, higher work engagement and task performance, intent to stay with organization for a longer time, and engagement and organizational citizenship behavior. higher creativity and hope, and higher trust in ethical behavior of followers. So when authentic leaders engage in ethical behaviors, those ethical behaviors tend to impact or have an influence on followers' ethical behavior. So what are some lessons? So majority of research from a theoretical perspective states that people have the capacity to become authentic leaders by engaging in different developmental activities. So from this perspective, and from organizational perspective, human resource department should develop opportunities for leaders at different levels of organization to develop those capacities. So from a practical perspective, they help them identify or clarify the purpose. Why are we here for? So we know that when people have a clear purpose, tend to lead to more passion, have a clear understanding of their values. And those values should translate in daily behaviors, and then work on developing those relationships, be open, transparent, engage in clear communication with followers, develop self-discipline, have leaders develop those capacities, not for followers to guess what's going to happen with the behavioral leader tomorrow, and then develop some empathy of that heart and lead with compassion. From a theoretical perspective, work on self-awareness, make sure you develop that internalized moral perspective, balanced processing, and then work on developing good relationship through transparency and openness. That will be trust, which is the foundation of every single relationship. So take advantage of developmental opportunities in organizations, whether it's internally, you might have opportunities to push yourself to grow and develop, or it might be outside the organization or just in personal life. Engage in reflective practices. Reflective practices are very good for development of self-awareness, and that will lead to higher emotional intelligence, and that will help you become more authentic and do the right thing. Try to be honest with yourself and others, and try to work for the common good. That's the essence of leadership, and I think authentic leadership will lead to higher degree of trust between leaders and followers. That's it for now. Thank you for watching.